We'll settle down, as I think. Now, we're going to now have a questions and answers session. I think we've got too many questions to get through them all, so I've tried to take the ones, some of them are obviously similar, and I'm going to take cross-section and maybe run one or two together. So if we can kick off, Nigel, with a question from Ian Walsh. What can we say to those many people who will be sitting on the fence? What is the elevator pitch to persuade those who are unsure?
Well, I think, yeah, actually I think there are a lot of people out there who are a bit undecided. And there'll be people like me telling them, actually, freed from this, we'll save all these financial contributions, we'll go on trading with Europe, but then we'll be free to make our own trade deals with other parts of the world, and maybe re-engaging with our friends in the Commonwealth might be quite a good place to start. And there'll be, you know, Lord Mandelson and others saying, oh, it's very risky, and you know, they won't trade with us. And sometimes I get the feeling that the economic arguments to and fro may actually confuse a lot of the undecided voters, in the sense they won't be quite sure who to actually believe. What is the elevator pitch? I think the elevator pitch is this. You know, 8 out of 10 people in this country believe now that controlling immigration sensibly is the single most important challenge that this country faces. And our message to the British people is, if, like us, you think that an Australian-style point system is the way to manage immigration, so that you choose people on merit, you choose people with skills and trades to bring, you don't, as the Australians now do, though not before, accept criminals, and one or two got that. And you make sure that anybody that comes brings their own medical insurance, because nobody should be able to claim off the state until they've been in a country for 5 years. And the other side know this. The other side know that their vulnerability is that they continue to support open borders, and when we confront them, as we will in this campaign, with the fact that Turkey is about to be fast-tracked to the European Union, I don't believe they've got an answer. And I'm not saying any of this because we're against people from other parts of the world. We're not. But the point about our borders, the point about our security, the point about immigration is we need to control it, and we cannot do that as members of the EU. It is that, in my opinion, that will win us this referendum.
We've got some questions coming in from Facebook, so I've got one from Glenn that says 2017 is too long to wait for the referendum. Nigel, how can we speed it up?
Well, Glenn, the answer to that, old son, is if we hadn't been here, it might have been 2027. So I think, I don't know when this referendum is going to be. You may have seen that the House of Lords the other day voted for 16 and 17-year-olds to have the vote, and that is something that the Electoral Commission say will take many months to register. You know, perhaps it's going to be sooner than 2017, perhaps it's going to be September or October next year. I don't know when it's going to be. What I do know is we have to be ready to fight it, and what I do know is that actually what will define the battle in this country will be the battle between the people and the politicians. And that is why we've been doing this tour right across the country, and we'll go on doing it right up until polling day, is we need to motivate people to believe that actually they can do something, that they can join hands with us, they can help us, they can take away our literature, they can talk to their friends in the local pub or the WI or the family at Sunday lunch. And we need to send you out as messengers from us. We need you to bore everyone you know into absolute submission until they promise you they'll vote no.
I've got two questions now which are kind of, one's topical and the other one runs into it, so I'll run them together as a single question. One from Graham Branch. Should 16 to 17-year-olds get the vote in the referendum? And Jack Colliery says, what is the biggest obstacle to getting young people involved in the referendum and how can we overcome it?
Okay. Firstly, 16, 17-year-olds, everybody in politics will stand here before you tonight and say, yes, of course, I think it's wonderful that 16 and 17-year-olds should get the vote, but I'm not made like that. I think that the age at which you should vote should be exactly the same as the age at which you can be a candidate. And so I asked myself the question, would it be right for 16-year-olds to go into the House of Commons or the European Parliament or the local county council or unitary authority? And I conclude that actually 16 is too young to be an elected representative of the people, and therefore I believe it's too young to have the vote. That is my view. I know that after this meeting I'll be sort of caught in the corridors by young people. I'm not saying young people aren't capable mentally of making that decision, but understand that distinction that I draw. However, I think 16 and 17-year-olds will get the vote in this referendum, and they'll get the vote because the political class think they've got more chance of that age group voting for them than against them, all right? And they base that, I'm afraid, on much of what has been taught through our schools over the course of the last few years. However, if you look across the rest of Europe and you look at the parties that are opposed to membership of the Euro or opposed now to membership of the European Union, whether they're on the left or whether they're on the right, they have one common characteristic, and that is that they are dominated by the 18 to 34-year-olds. Marine Le Pen in France, her support amongst 18 to 34-year-olds is now over 40%. And it's the same for the Grillo movement in Italy, and when the Swedes had a referendum on whether to join the Euro, 70% of the under-30s said no. So right across Europe, it's the young that are voting for different parties. It's the young that are rejecting this when they get a chance to have a referendum. And this tired assumption, just because kids at school have been taught that the EU's brought us peace and prosperity, actually, that is something that can be shattered. What will we do to shatter it? We've got to inspire young people that this is about them using this historic vote to take back control of the destiny of their own lives. That is what we've got to do, and make them feel empowered.
The next one's from Joseph Thirth, and is one that comes up quite a lot. Nigel, even if we left the EU, we would still trade with the EU and therefore have to comply with EU regulations. Wouldn't it be preferable to have a seat at the negotiating table to influence those regulations?
Okay, right. Who was that? Asked that?
Joseph Firth.
Joseph, where are you, mate? I'm not going to bite your head off, I promise. Hello there, hi, thank you. Joseph, let me explain this to you. We are part of what is called the European single market. They all go on about it as if it was absolutely blooming marvellous. But the point about the European single market is this. 15% of British GDP, 15% is export of goods and services to the European Union. But as members of that single market, over which we have an 8% say in how the laws are made, and by the way, since David Cameron has been Prime Minister, there have been 40 occasions when he and his ministers have gone to Brussels to try to reject a piece of legislation, and you know what? He's lost 40 times out of 40. So even this idea that we've got some amazing influence over the legislation that is made there is flawed. But here's the real kicker. To be members of a single market, for 15% of our GDP, we have to accept rules and regulations that affect 100% of our economy. And go and ask any small businessman or small businesswoman. They're being asked to comply with a rule book that is designed for European trade when they never do any trade outside their own town or outside their own county. It does not make sense. What I'm arguing for is that we have a trade deal, a simple free trade deal with the European Union. We extend that concept of negotiating trade more broadly and globally, and we get back to Westminster the ability to regulate the 5 million men and women in this country who are the real heroes, the people that take risk, the people that borrow money, the people that set up their own companies, the people that create 60% of the employment in the private sector. And what we need to do is get European legislation off their backs and let them go out and make money and create jobs.
Well, the next one is from Roger Smith, and it's an ever-popular perennial question, always worth airing. How much would the UK save by leaving the EU?
Well, as I said to you, we put in 55 million a day, we get some money back, but even net, we're putting in over 11 billion pounds a year. So you can argue we'd save that. And others that say, oh, no, you'd still have to pay the money to trade with them. Hang on. They sell us all these motor cars more than we sell. They should be paying us to be in the European Union. It's all the wrong way round. We'd be better off, our fishing industry, for example. We are allowed to catch, by value, less than 20% of the market value of the fish that swim in British territorial waters. Reverse that, you'll boost the British economy by £2 to £3 billion a year. I see many savings, unnecessary red tape and regulation. I answered the previous question. Some of this stuff is difficult to quantify. But do I think that a Britain that's in control of its own destiny has the ability to shape laws that suit its own circumstances? And is that more likely to be wealth creating than being stuck as part of a mega bureaucracy over which we have little influence and virtually no veto? I am certain there are many savings to be made, there are many benefits, but you know what? This isn't just for me about money, important though that is. This is about something more important. This is about something more fundamental. This is about who we are as a people. And I want us to be proud and independent of who we are.
The next one's from David, and we're back on the subject of the referendum. Can this movement transcend party politics, given how, I think the word is divisive, UKIP are? I think I said that correctly.
Well, it's very interesting. People say UKIP's divisive. People say I'm divisive. It's definitely true that people whose worldview is completely opposed to mine don't like me. But fine. There have been lots of politicians over the last few decades who've tried to be all things to all people and ultimately stood for very little. I don't try and do that. But when it comes to the undecideds, actually, the undecideds are not put off by me, are not put off by UKIP. They're open-minded and prepared to listen and hear what we have to say. To win this referendum, let's put it like this. UKIP cannot win this referendum on their own, but this referendum cannot be won without UKIP. All right? That's the way that I see this position. And I very much hope there are more Labour figures and more Conservative figures that come out in this campaign. But I also equally feel, and it leads back a little bit to the question about motivating 16 and 17-year-olds, I also think that in a referendum, as opposed perhaps to a national election, there is a very big role to play for people who aren't elected politicians. And by that I mean sportsmen and entertainers and actors and whatever else it may be. And I think our side of the argument needs to get those kind of people on board. Youngsters living in Britain today are living in a culture that is obsessed and dominated by celebrity. Whether we like that or dislike that, it is a fact. And we've got to get some of those people onto our side, not just politicians.
If I can just add a word to that, because we're already transcending party politics, because last Monday I was on a platform with John Mills, who's a major Labour donor, the major donor to the Labour Party, and who was the man who organised the Get Out campaign in 1975. Although you wouldn't think, to look at him, he still looks quite young. And this morning I did a press conference with Andrew Rossendale, the MP for Romford, and we said some robust things about each other in the general election, and we've now joined forces to deliver a get-out vote in the London Borough of Havering, and I'm sure that's happening right across the board. Now, I think the time's come for some light entertainment, so it's from Trevor Newman. To me, it's a mystery what the SNP want to become independent from the UK, yet want to remain shackled to Brussels. Can you figure it out?
No. Well, I did, Trevor, I did touch on that in my speech earlier. No, it is completely and wholly illogical. You know, you cannot be an independent, self-governing nation and a member of this European Union. And the problem north of the border is that none of the other traditional parties have dared challenge the SNP on this point, because the other parties are also all pro-EU. And I think that the sunshine that will be spread on the debate in Scotland as a result of a referendum on this issue is going to wake up a lot of SNP supporters who probably, when they think about this, will be quite angry by the position that Salmond and Sturgeon have taken. And please don't be conned by this argument that the Scots have a completely different view of the world to the English. At the moment, they're a little bit more pro the EU than we are. Maybe by the end of this campaign, we'll all be in the same place. Either you want democracy, either you want self-government, whether that's at a Scottish level or a UK level, but either way, if you believe in those things, you cannot believe in Mr. Juncker and the boys in Brussels.
We'll take another question from Facebook. This is from Julia, and it goes back to what Nigel was talking about earlier. How can the government put us at risk when they know some of those coming are from ISIS? I find it really scary. So she's talking about the migration problem here.
Well, I mean, this is, you know, even since the news, even since the horrid, awful events of Paris last Friday, as I said, they've learnt nothing. Juncker said, oh, these were a few criminals. But how many are there? I mean, Interpol yesterday was suggesting that there may be as many as 25,000 jihadists somewhere in Europe, and they only have a record of an anticipated 5,000 of them. We have a massive, massive problem. And I find it very odd that the British government says that we must confiscate the passports. I'd better put mine back in my pocket, otherwise I'll leave it behind, won't I? Funny, I go through, going back and forth to Brussels and Strasbourg, I go through border control quite a lot, and quite often there's somebody on border control who says, no, don't worry, Mr. Farage, you don't need those here anymore. Not that they're allowed to give a view, of course. No, I mean, so the British government position is that we must confiscate the passports of those who want to go to fight in Syria. And then we're told there are 450 people on Britain's streets who have fought in Syria and been brutalised by that war. I don't know about taking away the passports of those that want to go to Syria. We should take away the passports of those who want to come back.
A funny thing happened to me on the way to the airport once. I was in the queue with a slightly pompous Tory MP.
There's lots of those.
who we all get given a special EU passport as MEPs, and we were trying to get through passport control in Frankfurt, and they didn't recognise what it was. So that caused quite amusement with me, if not him, for me. The next one really is one I'd like to ask, actually, Nigel. It's a brilliant one. Will Nigel challenge David Cameron to a debate on national TV?
Well, as I said, Bill Cash and I have got Mr Barroso and Mr Clegg next Monday, which is a very good start, I think, to these debates. Listen, I would love to have a head-to-head debate without ties. We can be all cash, you know, and you know, he can be Dave, I can be Nige. Well, you know, I would debate with David Cameron any day or any night of the week in any location he chooses on this issue. I want to know, David, why Turkey joining the European Union, which you fought for since 2005, is a good thing for our national security. That's the question I want to ask the Prime Minister. I have a feeling that when I do make the offer, it probably won't be accepted.
This one is a specific, but it might apply to a lot of people. It's a chap called Henry Allen, and he says, I want to get the UK out of Europe as soon as possible. My only concern is I love Europe, and I have a Hungarian girlfriend who is currently...
I mean, good luck to you, Henry. I mean, I'm all for that sort. I mean, it's funny. Enoch Powell in the referendum in 1975 said he was very happy with increased intercourse between the peoples of Europe, but I'm not sure he really knew what he was saying, actually. Henry, when I heard the start of your question, I bridled a bit, because you talked, Henry, about Europe. We are not talking in this referendum about Europe. This referendum has nothing to do with Europe. What has happened is these people in Brussels have hijacked the word Europe, and in the place of the most diverse, at times difficult, but diverse and most interesting cultural continent on the planet, with different peoples and different languages and different cultures and different cheeses and all the rest of it. And in place of all of that, they've said, we now own Europe, and that is Europe. That, folks, has nothing to do with Europe. That has never been legitimised by the peoples of Europe. And if I hear any of the broadcasters, when they interview me, talk about Europe, I will stop them immediately. And we must send out a big positive message that we love Europe, but we don't like the European Union. They love that. They love that. The European. It's very interesting. Very interesting.
This one kind of leads on from there, and it's from James Skinner. Do you think it would be possible for the party to provide more substantive information to voters on where the EU intends to take the people of the UK and Europe in the future? Can we have more information on the EU's plans for the future? They publish it.
James, I mean, look, you know, when you fight a campaign, a referendum campaign, you have to have a full menu available to the people. For those that want to drill down and study the intricacies of the treaty, well, they can go online and find all of that, and we and other groups have to make sure that that is available to them. But what we need to remember, James, in this campaign is there are many, many millions of people out there who are struggling to earn a living, you know, working all the hours God sends, trying to bring up families and all the rest of it, and they haven't got time, you know, for big detail. What they need are big, simple, straightforward, open, honest messages. And I genuinely believe that if we make our side of the campaign too intellectual, if we use language that actually is pretty impermeable, there's a difficult word, no, unless we use language that is simple, straightforward and direct, and speak directly to the hearts and minds of the British public, we'll be making a grave, grave error. Keep it simple, stupid. That is the way for us to win.
I've got one here from David Watford, but also one on Facebook from Amanda, and they're similar. They're asking about, could we not argue that it is discriminatory to give preference to EU citizens regarding immigration? Why should a doctor from Kenya have no automatic right when one from Europe does? And the one from Amanda says, Nigel, what do you think about the government giving houses to migrants when we have our own people freezing on the streets, homeless, going hungry?
I think housing is one of the most contentious political issues in this country, and nowhere is it more contentious than here in London, this increasingly overcrowded city with simply not enough housing and certainly not enough affordable housing. So, I really do get and understand that. First question again, Gerard. Sorry, I'm getting tired. You can tell that, can't you?
I think I'll put it down now.
I've done 12 already. I'm not doing badly, am I? Really? You know.
Whether it's it is indeed discriminatory to give preference to EU citizens.
So I remember when I first left school, got a job in London. When you went to get your hair cut, or you went to buy a pine, which I've been known to do, the person serving you, invariably in those days, was from New Zealand, or from Australia, or South Africa, or Canada. Did you remember? There were hundreds of thousands of people from the Commonwealth used to come, and they'd spend a year here or 18 months here and then invariably go home. They now find it almost impossible to get visas to come to this country, despite the fact these are our real friends and allies and actually relations. So the engineer from India or the doctor from New Zealand now finds it damned hard to come to Britain and get a work permit, but we have a complete open door to anybody from Southern and Eastern Europe who wants to come, bring their families, get a job, access the health system, the housing system, or anything else. We now discriminate against the rest of the world in favour of the European Union. Just how mad is that?
I'll just do one more, Gerard. I'll leave that through. I've got one more. I've got two funny ones at the end, okay? Right, we can do one serious one and then two slightly not so serious ones together.
He hasn't told me any of this, believe me.
I know you're good at the one-liners. What message would you give to all the disenfranchised voters who are worried that the same result as the general election will occur in the referendum, and a lot of support, where we had a lot of support but no victory?
Well, look, I mean, what happened in the referendum, and that question is, I think, geared very much at UKIP. What happened at the general election was, pretty tough for us. 4 million votes and one seat, more votes than the SNP and Lib Dems ended up together. But there we are. That's gone. It's 6 months ago, and you know something? Gerard and I have been in this from the very start. From the foundation of UKIP back in 1993. And he and I have both stood in election after election all through the 1990s. Indeed, I was the first ever official candidate for UKIP, and I stood in the Eastleigh by-election, and I managed to beat the late, great, screaming Lord Such by 162 votes. How about that? So the party has been a huge part of my life, and in many ways, I've given up a sensible job and all sorts of things to do this. But important though the party is, this issue matters to me more than any political party. This issue is about our country. It's about the very thing that those who came before us loved so dearly. They in many cases sacrificed everything they had to defend its independence and its freedom, and I'm damn well determined to get it back in this referendum.
Right, I think I've saved the two most important questions for the end, from Steve Batter and Ricky Cower. If Britain leaves the EU, what will you and your MEPs do for work? And what pub are you drinking in after?
Right. I mean, look, I would be delighted As a British MEP who is going to advocate the no side in this referendum, yes, I am the turkey that is voting for Christmas. And that's great. And we don't need MEPs or highly paid people in the Commission. We want a Europe of trade, a Europe of cooperation, a Europe where heads of state and relevant ministers sit round tables and agree things that cross borders, and agree to agree or agree to disagree. And I don't want Britain just to leave the European Union. I want Europe to leave the European Union. I want to have a free Europe. And as for what pub I'm drinking in afterwards, I've got this reputation that I think may be a little bit unfair. No, I really do, honestly. But one of the problems is I turn up in pubs now, and without anybody asking me, these pints get thrust in my hand by very generous supporters. So I'm not going to put on public record where I'm going later, but I will be sloping off somewhere. I've done my best. I've answered 15 questions. I'll hand you back to Gerard to close proceedings, but thanks for coming along tonight in such great numbers. We are doing these tours all over the country, and thank you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to wrap up. Let me add my little answer to the bit at the end about what are the MEPs going to do for work after we all lose our seats in the European Parliament. Well, I'll probably be too old for anything. I'm going to retire probably, but I might well, along with some of my colleagues, try again to win a seat in the House of Commons, because even if we get out, well, I keep saying when we get out of the European Union, how can we possibly trust these parties that have betrayed our country for the last 50 years? We need people in the House of Commons, and we need more people in the House of Lords, so that we can actually make sure that our country stays free from the European Union once it gets out. I have to say that winning the referendum is going to be merely the start of the next big fight, which is to actually get our country out, because the Referendum Act only asks the public's opinion. There is absolutely not a word in it about actually enforcing that decision and making it happen. So we're going to win, and then you can look forward to the next big fight, which is getting out. Thank you very much. You've been a fantastic audience.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.